He chose her over me. But I changed her life anyway. Before we continue, please like and subscribe. Part 1, A Proposal with Strings. If you told me 10 years ago that I'd be sitting in an overpriced cafe, checking my business account balance, while sipping an organic latte, I would have laughed in your face. Back then, I had bigger plans. World domination, maybe? Or at least some ridiculously lavish penthouse. But here I am, watching the stock market with one eye, while the other's on the latest philanthropic project that, truthfully, I wasn't sure I wanted to be a part of in the first place. I'm Lila Heron, a self-made entrepreneur. Though I've learned the hard way that the term self-made often comes with a long list of questionable decisions and impulsive moves. I didn't come from money. Oh no. I climbed that mountain with blood, sweat, and a lot of caffeine. The kind of caffeine that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., realizing you've sent an email to the wrong CEO, or accidentally accepted a dinner invitation from someone you later found out was a scam artist. But that's the price you pay for success, right? I do things in big, bold strokes. You won't find me dipping my toes in something small, no. If I'm doing it all the way. Which is why, when I stumbled upon the world of philanthropy, I didn't just sponsor a kid here or there. No, I went big. I started supporting students, building foundations, and creating opportunities where there were none. Mark Davin, a college student with a smooth smile and an even smoother pitch, came to me one day, asking for a hefty sum to help his friend, Nora, win. I didn't know Nora. In fact, I had never heard of her. But Mark, well, he had a way about him. He was that perfect mix of charming, ambitious, and maybe just a little too eager to please. The kind of guy who would walk into a room and make you feel like you'd known him forever. So when he explained that Nora was a brilliant, but impoverished student, struggling to make ends meet, I wasn't exactly a hard sell. She needed help, and hey, I'm all about empowering the next generation. And there it was. Mark assured me it wasn't for him. He wasn't asking for money for his own needs, no. It was all for her. How could I resist? But then, things started to feel off. You know how they say you can't judge a book by its cover? Well, it turns out that sometimes, you can't judge an email or a social media post by its hashtag either. I started noticing something strange. Cryptic posts on Mark's feed. He'd put up pictures of sunsets or motivational quotes, and in the captions, "She's the one who keeps me going," or "Nora, my rock." Sounds sweet, right? Maybe a little too sweet. I mean, I get it. We're all emotional beings, and who doesn't post about the person who's there for them? But this felt, well, suspicious. My rock. What did that even mean? Rock, as in the one you lean on when life's tough. Or rock, as in the one you've built a whole little world around. Something about the way Mark talked about Nora didn't sit right with me. Was he being the selfless guy helping her out? Or was he a little too attached? Or worse, was this some kind of weird love story that involved me funding their whole fairy tale? The more I saw, the more I felt like I was getting pulled into something far more complicated than I'd signed up for. So, what did I do? I decided to take matters into my own hands. Instead of just writing a check and trusting Mark's glossy pitch, I decided to meet Nora. I needed to see the person I was about to make a financial commitment to. You know, check her out. Make sure she wasn't some sort of mystical genius that Mark had manufactured to get me to fund his secret romantic endeavor. Who knows what these kids get up to these days? At least, that's what I told myself. But deep down, I had a feeling I was stepping into something that would be a lot more than I bargained for. A meeting with Nora was bound to either confirm that I was just being paranoid or, well, let's just say I wasn't sure I was ready for the truth. Now here I was, trying to unravel a mystery that might be a whole lot more complicated than just a girl needing financial help. The real question was, what was I really funding? Part 2, Seeds of Betrayal. Meeting Nora was something else. Imagine a tiny village tucked away somewhere between rolling hills and dusty roads, just far enough from the bustling city to make you forget the rush of the world. The air smelled of earth, wood, and hope. And there, sitting in front of me, was Nora Wynne. I had heard a lot about her. A brilliant mind trapped in an impoverished life. What I hadn't expected was the quiet intensity that radiated from her. She was a girl of contradictions. Her clothes were simple, frayed at the edges, but her eyes, they told a different story. The kind of eyes that hinted at worlds she could unlock if given the key. She greeted me warmly, but there was this underlying humility in her demeanor that made it clear she wasn't expecting handouts. She wasn't one of those poor but hopeful types who was just waiting for a lucky break. Nora wasn't asking for charity. She didn't even want my money. In fact, when I offered to help her directly, she hesitated. Her pride was as thick as the walls of the small cottage she called home. And I'll admit, I was impressed. How many people in her position would have jumped at the chance to grab something from someone like me? Someone with money to burn. But not Nora. She didn't want to be someone's project. She had her own dreams and goals, and it was clear she wasn't about to let anyone, not even me, define what those were. But that's exactly why I decided to bypass Mark. He was too much of a middleman, too eager to play the role of the selfless benefactor. Nora didn't need him. She needed herself. And if I could help her find the resources she deserved, then maybe I'd actually be making a difference. What could go wrong, right? I was funding the future of some kind of genius. The world was my oyster. Oh, but I should have known better? I guess that's the problem when you start trusting people too easily. When you think that because you want to believe in someone, that it means you should. Because if you should have known better, you probably wouldn't be in the mess I found myself in a few weeks later. I was at my office, minding my own business, when I stumbled across the first clue. A university email buried under a mountain of paperwork. I skimmed it at first, figuring it was just spam. But something about it caught my eye. It was about Mark, specifically, a record of his academic success, or, rather, the complete lack thereof. Turns out, Mark wasn't the top-tier student he had convinced me he was. Oh no, he wasn't even close. I'd funded years of his education, believing every word he'd told me. But in reality, he'd lied. His academic history was a complete fabrication. He had managed to weave a narrative so convincing that it had fooled me. The self-made entrepreneur who prided herself on recognizing bullshit when it was right in front of her. The deception was almost impressive, if I wasn't so pissed off. When I confronted Mark about it, you'd think he'd crumble under the weight of his own lies. But no. He gave me the classic I had to lie to escape my tough childhood speech. As though that somehow made it okay. It was the oldest trick in the book. His words were like a blur in my ears. I had to do it, Lila. You don't understand what it's like to come from nothing, yawn. I was ready to toss him out on his ass, and be done with it. The nerve of this guy, playing the tragic backstory card to explain away his fraudulence. What, was I supposed to just feel sorry for him? The poor guy, who thought lying about being a stellar student would somehow earn him my trust. But hold on to your hats, folks, because the real bombshell came later. I wasn't just dealing with a liar, I was dealing with a manipulator. I was visiting Nora one afternoon, and we were talking about life, her struggles, her dreams, and the kind of research she was diving into. It was one of those conversations where everything felt important, and every word carried weight. Then, out of nowhere, she dropped the bomb. She casually mentioned that she thought I was funding her through Mark. Mark? Apparently, she'd bought into the whole story he'd sold her. You know, the one where he was a self-made success. The one who was giving her everything she needed. Nora had no idea that I had taken the reins directly. In fact, she thought that Mark had been the one to set everything up. He'd convinced her that he was the one supporting her, and that I was just a part of his success. I felt like I'd been hit with a ton of bricks. Hilarious, right? Here I was, thinking I was the one helping her. But no, I was just another piece in Mark's elaborate fairy tale. I couldn't believe it. Not only had he been lying to me, but he'd been spinning a completely different story to Nora. He'd made her believe that he was the hero, when really, he was the villain in both our stories. That's when the full weight of the situation hit me. I wasn't just angry, I was furious. I had been played. And now, Nora was caught in the middle of a web that Mark had woven so well that it almost felt like fate. I thought I was being noble, helping someone with real potential. But what was I really doing? Funding a fantasy? Or was I just another pawn in Mark's game? Part 3. Rising Beyond Limits. If I thought Mark's lies couldn't get any worse, I was sorely mistaken. Turns out, I had only scratched the surface of his deception, and what I uncovered next was enough to make me want to put him in a cage and ship him to the moon. Mark had been using my name, the name of someone who had been so generous, so trusting, to take out loans. Yes, loans. He'd been borrowing money left and right, all while using my connections and reputation to back him up. Imagine the level of audacity this took. He wasn't just lying about his grades or his success, he was literally using me as his financial safety net, all while tarnishing my reputation in the process. I didn't even know how to process that. It was like I was living in some twisted reality, where everything I had worked so hard for, everything I'd built, was being used as collateral for his mess. What was even worse was that he didn't stop there. He had already set the wheels in motion to use me as his escape route. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about power, control, and getting out of the mess he'd made without a care for anyone else. But just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. Of course it did. I was dealing with so much chaos at the time: loans, lies, betrayal, that I hadn't exactly been paying attention to my own health. Yeah, surprise, I wasn't living the picture, perfect life I'd made everyone believe. My health had been slipping, something I had kept under wraps for a while. You know how it is, keep your head up, power through, don't let anyone see you sweat. But Nora, bless her heart, wasn't the type to ignore things like that. One day, while we were chatting about life, and my most recent deep dive into Netflix documentaries, she noticed I was looking a little pale. And I'm not talking about the I had too much caffeine pale. It was the kind of pale that comes with something more, the kind of pale that doctors spend too much time obsessing over. When I finally opened up about it, told her what was going on with my health, she didn't flinch. She didn't pity me or make it all about her. No, Nora did what Nora does best, she dove into science mode. I'm talking full-on research mode. She was already a whiz in biology, a real genius when it came to understanding complex medical concepts, but this was different. She didn't just learn for the sake of learning. No, she took it personally. She felt indebted to me. Too much, maybe, and now she had a mission. To find a way to help me. No one had to tell her to do this. It wasn't some grand gesture of gratitude, or a way of saying thank you for everything I'd done for her. Nora didn't do things for recognition. She just wanted to give back in her own way, to find a solution, to fix what seemed broken. She started working on experimental treatments, mixing and matching protocols from every study, diving into trial research, reaching out to people with knowledge far beyond her years. Her obsession was palpable. I watched as she transformed from a struggling student into a young scientist on a mission. I couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed by her dedication, by the sheer brilliance she had. It was humbling, honestly, and if there was one thing I was sure of now, it was that Nora wasn't just some pawn in Mark's game. She wasn't anyone's sidekick. She was a force in her own right. And then, Mark came back. I should have known he would, of course. The man was like a bad penny, always turning up when you least wanted him around. But when he showed up this time, it wasn't with an apology, like I might have hoped for. No, it was something much worse. It was desperation in its purest form. Mark, ever the opportunist, waltzed back into my life with one goal in mind: to get me to clear his debts. His debts, people. He wanted me to erase the consequences of his shady dealings, his fraud, his lies. He thought he could talk his way out of this one, that he could twist my arm into saving him from the mess he'd created. I don't know if it was the sheer gall of the man, or the fact that he had the nerve to come to me at all that made me laugh. He was asking me for help, the guy who had used my name to get out of paying a single dime. I should have laughed him out of my office, but instead, I just stared at him, the weight of everything he'd done hitting me all at once. The betrayal, the manipulation, the fact that I had trusted him, really trusted him, and now here he was, trying to pull the same stunt all over again. But here's the thing, Mark's manipulation couldn't touch me anymore, not with Nora in my corner. Nora didn't need to ask for help. She was already working on a way to fix things herself. She wasn't waiting around for someone to come to her rescue. She was saving herself, and in the process, saving me. She was the only one who really had my back now. So when Mark came in, trying to charm his way into getting his debts wiped out, I could only sit back and watch as the whole thing unraveled for him. The fact that I had already seen through his lies was the last straw. He was done. No more games. At that moment, I realized something I hadn't fully understood until then. Sometimes the people who betray you aren't just the ones who steal your money. Sometimes they're the ones who steal your time, your trust, and your energy. But here I was, with Nora at my side. And I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Mark steal anything else from me. Not when I had someone worth investing in. Part 4, Redemption Through Kindness. A few months passed, and I couldn't help but feel this mix of pride and disbelief every time I saw Nora. At first, I thought maybe I had just given her a leg up, a stepping stone to something better. But as the months unfolded, it became clear. She wasn't just some struggling student anymore. She was a force. The first time I saw her break through, I nearly fell out of my chair. I had heard her talk about it, sure, about the treatments she was researching, the trials she was running. But you know how it is. You hear people talk about things like groundbreaking and game-changing, and you think, yeah, sure, that sounds nice. But this wasn't just talk. She had actually done it. She'd discovered a way to stabilize my condition, a process I never thought I would see the day for. And when I say stabilize, I mean it in the realest sense. I went from feeling like I was on a never-ending decline to, for the first time in a long while, feeling like I could breathe again. That was the first time I really believed in miracles. But Nora? Nora didn't stop there. If she was going to dive into something, she was going to make sure it was right. As if curing me wasn't enough, she dug deeper, her insatiable curiosity pushing her to explore the root causes of my illness. That's when she found the bombshell. A direct connection between my health problems and an environmental disaster tied to a company my late father once owned. The plot thickens, right? Turns out, my father's company had caused years of environmental damage that I never knew about. And the worst part, people, real people, had been suffering from it in ways they never understood. So much for the legacy of a company that was supposed to be my family's pride and joy. It was enough to make my blood boil. Now let's be clear, I wasn't about to sit idly by while the world around me burned. Not anymore. This was bigger than me. Bigger than just fixing my health. This was about making things right. And if Nora had found the solution to one of my problems, I was going to make sure we fixed the whole damn mess. I threw everything I had into Nora's research. We weren't just going to study this in a lab somewhere and hope for the best. No, this was going to be big. I pulled together the best doctors, researchers, and experts I could find to support her work. And with my resources? Well, let's just say there wasn't a problem I couldn't solve when it came to making sure Nora had everything she needed to continue her groundbreaking work. But it wasn't just about the research. I wasn't going to let the past slide either. I wasn't going to sit on my inheritance and forget that my father's company had caused real harm. No, I used my connections, my power, and every bit of leverage I had to make sure the environmental damage from my father's company was addressed, and that no one else would have to suffer from it like I had. At this point, I was on a roll, and I'm telling you, nothing could stop me. There was something exhilarating about knowing that I could not only change my own fate, but also make sure that no one else would have to walk the same painful path I had. There was power in that, real power. And it felt incredible. But, here's the kicker, I wasn't done yet. No, I had one last card to play. I decided to create a charity. I know. It sounds like something straight out of a Hallmark movie. Woman overcomes adversity, starts heartwarming charity. But hear me out. It wasn't just about the good press or the tax breaks. It was about creating something that would have a lasting impact on the world. Something that would live on long after I was gone. This charity wasn't going to be some fluff organization. I wasn't going to slap my name on it and call it a day. No, this was going to be a real change maker. A place where underprivileged kids like Nora could get the same opportunities she did, and more. A place where groundbreaking medical research would get the funding it needed, without being bogged down by corporate interests or political agendas. I had found my purpose, and I was going to make sure it was bigger than me. I was going to leave a legacy that mattered. And when I looked around at everything that had happened, from the betrayal to the redemption, from Mark's lies to Nora's breakthrough, I realized that maybe, just maybe, the best way to fight back was through kindness. I had my second chance at life, my second chance to make a difference, and I wasn't about to waste it. Because in the end, it wasn't about money or power or revenge. It was about doing something that mattered. And that's what I was going to do, starting with this charity, and everything that came after. So yeah, maybe I was a little like a Hallmark movie, but if this was a movie, I'd want the ending to be one that inspired people, made them believe in second chances, and maybe, just maybe, encouraged them to do a little good in the world themselves. I was writing my own legacy now, and it was one for the books. Part 5, A New Legacy. And then, plot twist, came the final moment that wrapped up Mark's entire saga. Nora, of all people, discovered that Mark had slunk back to their hometown. Quiet, remorseful, living a life of reflection. The man who had once been so full of bravado, so sure he could manipulate his way through life, was now a shadow of his former self. But here's the kicker, Nora forgave him. I know. You're probably thinking, wait, after everything he did? Forgiveness. But Nora wasn't like the rest of us. She was pure. She didn't hold grudges. She didn't need the drama. And she didn't need to keep Mark around to prove that she'd moved on. She had bigger things to focus on, her own life, her research, and the success she was carving out for herself. Forgiveness. Sure. But Mark? He was a ghost now. A relic from the past. He was yesterday's problem. And as far as Nora was concerned, she was too busy looking ahead to deal with him anymore. I wasn't mad about it. Actually, I was kind of relieved. No more Mark in my life. No more lies. No more manipulations. It was over. And speaking of looking ahead, Nora? She soared. She didn't just meet expectations. She shattered them. She became a leading voice in the medical community, working on treatments that were beyond anything I'd ever imagined. Her breakthrough didn't just help me. It was about to change countless lives. I could see it all happening. The world was finally recognizing what I had known all along. Nora was a genius. A force of nature who didn't let anything, certainly not a deceitful college kid, or a toxic family legacy, hold her back. She was unstoppable, and in my eyes, she was a hero. As for me, I sat back one evening, watching a new generation of students I had sponsored excel. It was the kind of moment I dreamed of, feeling like I'd made a real difference in the world, watching these bright young minds take their place in the world. I couldn't help but feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Everything had fallen into place, the mess of the past, now a distant memory. Life was good. And then, you guessed it, plot twist. I was sitting there, enjoying my peaceful moment, when I received a letter. Not just any letter? A letter from my estranged mother. Oh yeah, just when I thought my life had finally hit a peaceful note, here came a new chapter. And of course it was another twist I didn't see coming. My mother, the woman who had been out of my life for so long I'd convinced myself I didn't need her anymore, was suddenly back with a letter. And just like that, my happy ending was put on pause. Because, as it turns out, the game was never really over. It was just beginning. Funny how life works, huh? Just when you think you've finally got it all figured out, when you're sitting pretty and feeling like you can finally breathe, life throws you another curveball. But that's the thing. You don't get to control everything. Sometimes, all you can do is ride the wave, and hope you don't wipe out. So, as I sat there, staring at that letter, knowing it was about to throw me back into the whirlwind I thought I'd left behind, I realized something. Maybe there's no such thing as a happy ending. Maybe it's all just one long, crazy journey of twists, turns, and unexpected bumps in the road. And that's where the real adventure begins.